Most white Americans are obsessed with discovering our ancestry because we are yearning to understand where we come from. When we arrived in America, our job was no longer to be Greek or French or German or whatever. Our job was to be white and embark on the project of whiteness, right? The problem, of course, besides the violence, is that a mere 2 to 3 generations later, we're so hungry to figure out where we come from because whiteness is rootless. It's too new and it hasn't really done anything good for the world. We crave roots that have more nourishment. But I'm going to tell you now why the search for your European ancestors is always going to be fruitless and futile, and also why it's going to be okay anyway. I think it's an invitation for something even better. Like other people facing the rootless wonder that is European American existence, I sent off a sample of my DNA to a private company to tell me who I am. I knew the basics of my heritage in the sense that I knew my birth certificate said French, Welsh, Portuguese, and German. That's all I knew. 23andMe finished analyzing my data and they said, yeah, that all checks out. And also, did you know you're 12% Sardinian? No? I make some calls. No one in my family has any record of this, right? I become completely obsessed with Sardinia for 2 weeks. I am looking up Sardinian history. I'm looking up Sardinian culture. I am planning a $2,000 trip to Sardinia so I can go and try that like freaky worm cheese they have. For a reason I can't yet articulate, I know that being from this place makes me a more interesting person. And I log in one day to show someone and poof, it is just gone. They took all my little Sardinian Pokemon DNA points and put them into Portugal. Like the whole thing was just some kind of rounding error. And I was very upset about this. I felt betrayed. And then I was like, I just let a private for-profit company tell me a story about myself that I can never verify, that you can never verify unless you have a fucking time machine, and used it to change my entire perception about who I am. The whole exercise revealed itself to be what it truly was, which is useless. You go looking for your ancestors not because you are looking for blood purity. You're looking for stories. Blood will never tell you a story. You put a story on blood. You find out your part whatever, and you tell yourself a story about what that means about you based on stereotypes you've heard about that culture from other people. That is not the same thing as learning about what your ancestors were like. Were they kind neighbors? Were they loving parents? Were they cruel to strangers? What did they think of immigrants? What did they think was happening when they prayed? Did they ever think about you? You just don't get to know that with a DNA test. That will only ever be a story you make up in your head that you allow a DNA test to give you permission to indulge. And there is a freedom in this. Actually, stay with me. I think most of us want to be burdened with a legacy. We want destiny and direction that is so certain and so strong. We might actually have the gall, the bratty urge to fight it. DNA tests don't give us legacy. The freedom of America that was promised to European settlers can be realized by us, the descendants of those settlers, but perhaps not in the way that it was originally set out. I feel like a wandering white ghost. I think a lot of us do. But we are still the inheritors of incredible wealth and incredible things were built for us. We are ghosts holding bags of money and power. We need to realize that looking backward is only going to get us so far. We need to look forward. Maybe our ancestral legacy is the realization of the benefits of rootlessness, that we are part of a global family, and that it is our obligation to care about that. That is our evolution. We know how easy it is to be torn away from a bloodline, removed from a cultural and a national identity, and reformed into something new that doesn't fully understand itself and the consequences of that. Because borders always change. Nations always change, and cultures are always in a state of change. If you wrap your self-perception up too much in these things, these changing things, you lose the plot of what Ancestry is about. Ancestry is the search for family, for belonging. You already are a part of a family, even if it's a dysfunctional one. Care about that.
I used to believe that white people couldn't be spiritual until I realized that the vast majority of them were spiritual until they severed ties with their ancestors in spiritual practices in order to gain access to the concept of whiteness. The creation of whiteness as a racial category required the spiritual and cultural castration of the diverse European people it encompassed. To become white, they had to sever their connection with their specific cultural ancestors, folkways, and spiritual traditions, replacing them with a hollow identity based solely on racial supremacy and aligned with state-approved religion. The rise of centralized nation states and state-sponsored Christianity required the suppression of local pagan and folk spiritual practices. Celtic tradition, Nordic mythology, Slavic folk magic, countless others were systematically demonized, outlawed, and driven underground by church and state authority. It was a spiritual colonization within Europe. When these groups came to America, they were already partially disconnected from their roots. But to be a proper American meant they had to shed the remnants of their old country superstitions and embrace a more standard Anglo-Protestant identity. The mantra was to forget the old world and its ways and reinvent yourself in the new world as an American. This meant abandoning the collective ancestral identity of the past. Whiteness as a concept has no ancestors. It's ahistorical and offers an identity based on what you are instead of who you came from. They had to trade their ancestors for a racial category. The path to whiteness was to accept assimilation, abandoning native languages, adopting Anglo names, leaving their distinct religious practices behind, and actively distancing themselves from Black and Indigenous people to prove that they deserved the wage of whiteness, all to gain access to a bland and homogenized racial category. Yikes. And this is why the concept of white pride is inherently racist. Because you aren't white. You were never white. You abandoned everything you are and everything you came from to be a part of a supremacist group in order to have power over other groups of people. And when you know that, you know that there can be no such thing as white pride. You had an identity. You gave it up for false power. Now we all live in a system of capitalism, consumerism that benefits none of us. The more that you know.
Well, this is interesting. And what is happening right now is maybe something that a lot of us did not expect it would happen. You know, young white people beginning to question the mythology that they were raised in or their history. It's not like they don't deserve to know or question their history. But boy, it looked like, you know, they had it all together. After all, most of these histories were written by their ancestors. And not all of them, of course, but enough that you can actually now see the curiosity floating around about their ancestry. They are questioning colonial history, the race construction, and DNA testing, and the origins of Europe itself, the old, you know, white identity. It seems like it's beginning to crack. But here is a point we anchor on facts, though, you know. Modern science does not say that white people are less human or that black people or and white people are separate species. Actually, all of the humans of today are of the so-called modern humans are Homo sapiens. What science does say is that non-African populations they tend to carry more Neanderthal DNA because ancient humans who migrated out of Africa interbred with the Neanderthals in parts of Europe and parts of Asia thousands of years ago, of course. You know, most sub-Saharan African populations have little to no Neanderthal ancestry because Neanderthals, of course, lived outside of Africa. And that's actual research. Humanity might be one species, but the variations are there for everyone to see. And I think these variations are what uh, are beginning to shock most of these people. Now, let's continue to watch. We'll be back with more good analysis.
Here's a mystery for you. We know that Neanderthals, modelled by this lovely Neanderthal here with his man bun, and Homo sapiens interbred at some point and produced babies. Now, Neanderthals died out about 40,000 years ago, so they've been gone for a while now. Humans and Neanderthals walked the earth for about 5,000 years at the same time, so there was time for them to be doing this. And we know that there was interbreeding occurring because modern humans have got anywhere between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA, but not humans that came from Africa because no Neanderthals have been found in Africa. Now, the rate of Neanderthal DNA in humans is low. It's really, really low. So it suggests that whatever interbreeding was going on, it was not happening very frequently. Sort of think like once every 77 generations, kind of often. Now, scientists have analysed the DNA genomes of both human beings and Neanderthals, and this is where it gets interesting. Mitochondrial DNA, the DNA that is passed down the mother's line. No Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA has been found in Homo sapiens, but Homo sapien mitochondrial DNA has been found in Neanderthals, which means the only pairs breeding were Neanderthal males with Homo sapien females, about once every 77 generations. This is a bit of a head scratcher for scientists, and there's lots of theories as to quite what is going on here. Ranging from we just haven't found the evidence yet that Neanderthal women were picking up our men, to maybe the evidence is there but it's biodegraded over time, through to maybe there was successful pairings but the offspring didn't actually survive and that's why we don't have the DNA. And of course we don't know how these communities actually lived. One of my favourite facts about Neanderthals and Homo sapiens is although we know that they interbred, there is very, very, very limited evidence of them actually coexisting together, like sharing house spaces or cave spaces, which does rather suggest that it was a bit of a hit it and quit it situation. We don't know if these very rare couplings were done willingly or were maybe forced, but if that's the case, then why aren't we seeing mitochondrial DNA in humans as well? Maybe this was all the work of one, maybe two messy human women who just really, really fancied a Neanderthal.
Hey, good morning. I can't find the comment, but somebody asked me about white history and why there's no White History Month. And since it's June 1st, I figured why not talk about white history for a month, starting with Greenwood, Oklahoma. On May 31st, 1921, thousands of angry white people flooded the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. You see, the white people of Tulsa, Oklahoma were pissed off at the audacity of black people to turn the Greenwood district into a thriving, affluent, opulent black community. How dare they, when we have segregation set in place and legalized discrimination to prevent them from being prosperous, how dare they prosper in the face of adversity? So, white men told a lie that riled up other white men until thousands of angry white people formed a mob that flooded the streets of the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There, this angry mob of white people killed over 300 innocent black people. They burned over 1,250 homes. They looted businesses and then burned them to the ground. And in less than 24 hours, angry white people reduced years of black generational wealth and black excellence to ashes. Now, some black families who lost everything in the destruction of Black Wall Street, as the Greenwood district was called, moved and never went back, while others decided to stay and wanted to rebuild Greenwood. But faced with such white adversity, they found rebuilding it to its glory days difficult. And to add insult to injury, white bank managers refused to let black people withdraw their money from the banks, saying that because you lost everything in the great fires, you have no proof that you ever banked with us. And so we're not letting you take out any money. That money has been sitting in the banks since 1921, accruing interest, and their descendants today still don't have access to the money in those banks. And that's how the bombing of Black Wall Street, or the Tulsa Race Massacre, became a moment in white history.
For more than 40 years. So it's incredible now to have the DNA data that really shows us what this guy looked like. You know, the hair, the eyes, the face, that combination of blue eyes and dark skin, really very striking, something we wouldn't have imagined. And to also get from the DNA, details of his biology, the fact that he couldn't digest milk as an adult. That's something that came really with the advent of farming, and 10,000 years ago people in Britain didn't have that. And of course it's very striking. For a 10,000-year-old human, our expectations a few years ago would have been that this individual would have had maybe dark hair but fairly pale skin, possibly blue eyes. And what we've got is a quite unusual combination of this dark, slightly curly hair, really quite dark skin, and quite striking blue eyes.
1, 2, 3, bye-bye!
There's a trend that happens online, especially on this app, where a certain demographic of people come online consistently and say, guess how old I look? This is a normal 40-year-old. This is a normal 30-year-old. This is a normal 50-year-old without filler, without Botox. And yes, while this generation and the world has normalized cosmetic procedures, what these videos are intending to do is normalize the rate of aging or normalize the rate of skin or sun damage that some demographics have as the normal standard way of aging. There was a young lady that came on here who was 25 and she had severe sun damage, like severe skin damage. And she was like, this is a normal 25-year-old, no Botox, no filler. And half the comments were people being like, hey, like, use sunscreen. But there was this trend online of people being like, you look great. These people don't know what a real face looks like. I do know what a real face looks like, and no one at 25 should look that old. This is even only a topic for me because the normalization of the white standard is the issue that we're going through. Now, we've all heard the phrase black don't crack. Black cracks for some people, but genetically and literally, quite literally, we age slower than white people. And there's a slew of scientific research done on this. It's our skin density, it's the melanin, it's a lot of factors that go into why we just look younger on average than white people. I'm 40 years old, and every time I say that, people are like, what do you mean you're 40 years old? And I'm like, I'm a black 40. Black 40 is not white 40. But 25, I don't care whether you're white, black, brown, Asian, 25-year-olds are still young. You don't look 40 at 25. I say this to say, stop coming online and asking people what age you look. I think a lot of you have like a humiliation kink or like you're a masochist, but stop trying to normalize white people aging and white skin as the standard, because you guys aren't the standard in the world. In fact, Europeans are the minority of the world. The rest of us are all melanated people. So, but please stop coming online and saying that we sound crazy and everyone ages the same way, or this is a normal. There's no such thing as a normal 40-year-old, normal 50-year-old. We all age different, and we have to normalize all of us being different because genetically we are different. Happy Sunday.
The craziest thing about going to Europe as an American for me was seeing the way that white people's skin ages in its natural habitat. Because I've lived in California my entire life, and my skin has visible sun damage everywhere. Like, you know, there's these sunspots, these freckles, these like really fine lines that come from tanning and burning and blah, blah, blah. And everyone I know who's white, who has lived in the same area, they have a similar situation. If you look closely, there's sun damage all over their skin. I'm not saying it's a tragedy. I'm just saying, like, that's a fact of life. That's just what happens. When I went to Poland, for the first time ever, I saw white people who were like full grown, like 50-year-old adults with basically no sun damage. Like, if you looked at them, obviously they were like, you could tell that they were 50. They had normal wrinkles from like being alive for that long and smiling and laughing and whatever. But like, they didn't have like sun damage wrinkles or spots or freckles or anything. They didn't have like any of this stuff. They were just like flat white. Like, just completely white. Like alabaster. And it was crazy because I've never even like seriously thought that was possible. I didn't know. I mean, I guess I know it makes sense historically that if your skin evolved for that place, it wouldn't get damaged. But I've just never seen that before in America ever. And it was just so shocking to me. And it just made me think about how unfit for the environment white people truly are in America.
Sorry, but can I just say how weird it is for a Middle Eastern girl who've been bullied since like 5 years old about, ew, you're so brown, you're so hairy, nah, nah, nah. And then like all of a sudden in the past 5 years, like the whole internet's like, oh, you're white part. Like, it's so weird, and like, it's not normal. Like, I don't know what's wrong with the internet's like perception of like people and what they're supposed to look like. Like, I don't know if you remember, but a white girl without like makeup, tan, bloody lashes, eyebrows looks something like this. Like that's their baseline, and nothing wrong with that. Like, every race is beautiful in their own way. I'm just saying, like, I'm shocked that like we've forgotten what people are supposed to look like, and now suddenly we're all white passing. I don't know, it's just very odd behavior. I mean, I love getting angry at stuff, so this is like perfect for me, because I'm like getting filled with rage. Anyway, like, what the hell? Like, I'm literally wearing a filter to make my nose look even smaller because I'm so bloody brainwashed from my whole life. Anyway, thank you so much for your comment, and I will talk to you another time, Nida.
History of pale skin. People were dying to be white. Literally. Did you know that in medieval Europe, fair skin was all the rage? Women would place leeches on their earlobes so that it can drain the blood from their face to appear more pale. Others would slap some rose water and some flour on their face and call it a day. And good old Queen Elizabeth here, she would slather her face with cerise, one of those, which is a lead and vinegar paste. Researchers say because of all the years of this poisoning, it left her skin with holes in it the size of craters, bad breath and hair loss, and they even say it very well could have killed her. And by the 17th century, women had discovered that the same ingredient in rat poison can also make them look pale. So why not? In 1625, a product called Aqua Tofana came out. Pretty much promised women that their milkshakes will bring all the boys to the yard, aka having all the boys kissing their fair cheeks. This had arsenic in it, and when it did bring the boys to the yard, it killed over 600 men. In 1751, this lovely lady here, Maria Gunning, at 27, she died from lead poisoning from her makeup. Her deadly face paint also set her liver on fire. By the Victorian era, women still wanted to look faint, but heavy makeup and arsenic poison was just so last century. So instead, the ladies chew on arsenic complexion wafers. Wafers made women white by killing the hemoglobin in the blood, but it also slowed oxygen to the brain.
This is Jerusalem in 1925. Why do you think the leader said, how are you guys Jews if you guys left black but came back white? How'd you leave black but came back white? We've been lied to.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shamai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shamai had Nubian features, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shamai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elite were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shamai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed.
They were dark skinned, but they were not black. But they are not Negro.
What?
What? Because look at the lips of the Negroes like that, and the nose like this. It's not really the Egyptian origin at all. It's different, completely different. And this is why you cannot connect the Egyptian civilization with the African at all. It's different. Or from Syria, Palestine, Mesopotamia, it's different, completely.
No colored people, or for whites only. Can you imagine? I want to learn black history. I'm on Amelia Island, just north of Jacksonville in northern Florida. I stopped by to see this historical marker. Have you ever actually stopped and looked at one of these things? American Beach was established in 1935 under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln Lewis, one of Florida's first black millionaires. Florida's beaches were racially segregated until the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. You could not go to the main beaches in the Jacksonville area. You had to drive all the way up here to Amelia Island, which is still kind of out of the way. Because of this, American Beach became regionally popular since it was one of the few beaches in the Southeast open to African Americans. You know how there's always a bunch of signs at the beach, no driving or no pets or whatever. Imagine you're at a white beach and one of the things that it says is no colored people or for whites only. Can you imagine? Other sites in American Beach trace their history to the Civil War era. In 1862, Union forces captured Amelia Island and the freed slaves founded Franklin Town at the south end of this island. The Franklintown Cemetery still exists today. Whoa, it still exists, and it's on Highway A1A. Let's check it out. I just found the site of the historical Franklin Cemetery. Uh-oh, better call this number. I was unable to reach anyone, but I went around to the side where there's just a little hedge between me and the cemetery, so I can check it out from here. I need to remember that all this history is in the family history of so many Americans today. It's in their memories, it's part of their identity, and that's why it's important to know this.
Did you know that American colonists were so stinky that native people could smell them a mile away? Okay, that was a slight exaggeration, but their hygiene was very bad. 17th century Europeans did not regularly participate in full immersion bathing. Instead, they washed their face and hands at a basin each day and believed that washing their linen undergarments was enough to keep their body clean. Native Americans bathed regularly in open rivers and streams. And even their oral hygiene was superior. They used things like chew sticks, mint, and charcoal to keep their teeth fresh and clean. Many of us were taught in school that Native Americans were simply defeated by the strength of European troops, but this wasn't true. Germs killed more Native people than guns. Millions of Native people died because of the horrible diseases brought over by Europeans as a result of bad hygiene. This included diseases like smallpox.
Alright, now let me tell you the origin of the white race. So about 6,000, 7,000, or 8,000 years, the white race landed on this planet. And it was created by a dude named Yakub, which is a big-headed scientist and the father of the white race. And it took him 600 years to complete the white race. And he was doing it on an island called Patmos. And when he completed the science experiment, he migrated them on the Caucasus Mountains. Which is why y'all was given the name Caucasian, because y'all stem from the Caucasus Mountains. Now, white people have 4% Neanderthal DNA, and they're only 96% human. And the Neanderthal DNA comes from the monkey. Now, the white race has DNA, and black people have DEA. Now, you are human beings such as Caucasian, Asians, Dravidians, Mexican, and Arab, who have DNA which comes from the animals. And you have that because you are a hybrid of the animal genetics. Now, the difference between blacks and Latino, we have DEA. Or neuromelanin beings or carbonated beings, you have DEA, which is deoxyetheric acid, which connects you to the etheric realm. Now, guess how many Neanderthal traits you'll find in a black person DEA? None, right? You will find 0 traits of Neanderthal, because we are the original people that been here, which is the gods and the goddesses, and we are the most powerful beings in the cosmos. Now, this is not a racist thing, this is true knowledge. It's just we are all now one race, and they told us we were just one race.
Now, we know from DNA testing that pure Africans have 0 Neanderthal DNA. So there must have been some deep European origins of the Neanderthal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Whether it's deeply in Europe or sort of into the Near East is much debated. But yeah, it's outside of Africa. So, you know, humans and Neanderthals, of course, have a common ancestor about 600,000 years ago. Those two branches go their separate ways. Ours in Africa, theirs in the Near East and Europe. And at some point, they become what we would consider to be the Neanderthal gene pool. And when our branch comes back in and intersects them again, we have these matings and this admixture.
And so we are fertile with each other because we have the same common ancestor, even though we're many, many
such
years
a recent one
down from the line. And an interesting fact that I discovered in my own work for Starry Messenger, the book, was we grew up with the archetype of this stupid backward Neanderthal.
Yeah, they're the ones.
All right, now, for a very long time, whiteness was presented almost like it was an ancient civilization itself, whiteness, you know, like it was one united people with one history, one culture, one destiny, you know, the whiteness, you know. But the deeper many young white people begin to look, or many curious people, even black people who are curious with history, begin to dive deep into history, the more we discover something shocking, you know. White or whiteness was really, you know, never an ancient identity. It was a political identity, it was an economic identity, a social construct, and most importantly, it was just like a power, it was a power identity or a power tool. Because historically, Europeans were never simply white people in general. There were English, Irish, German, French, Italian, Slavic, Nordic, Balkan, and many more. And even today, they still remain the same. Many of these groups actually hated each other for centuries, and they fought brutal wars against each other. They enslaved each other. They colonized each other. They massacred each other. It's almost like that is in their DNA, you know. Europe itself was drenched in endless tribal conflicts long before uh, colonialism now expanded to the rest of the world. Then over time, especially during the colonial expansion and the transatlantic slave trade, a broader category began to form. Now, white. Why? Because whiteness became politically useful at that time. You know, it identified different, not identified, but actually unified, or it brought together those warring different European groups under one umbrella of power and privilege, especially in opposition to black people, to indigenous people, and generally the colonized populations around the world. And that's why then many scholars today argue that that race, especially whiteness, is largely a social construct rather than, you know, a biological reality. And then now the internet age, in the internet age, many young people are peeling back, you know, these layers of false history. DNA tests are exposing mixed ancestry, different truths. Historical documents are exposing propaganda, and academic research, of course, is, you know, also exposing how racial categories are artificially created and manipulated. And for some people, this is kind of creating a psychological crisis. You know, they're beginning to realize the truth, and the truth doesn't align with what they've ideologically held. Because when you are raised believing your identity represents superiority, civilization, intelligence, beauty, the beginning of greatness above everybody else, discovering that history is far more complicated or even completely different can actually become deeply uncomfortable. And some are shocked to learn that civilization actually did not, and they did not begin in Europe. Some are actually shocked to learn humanity in itself began in Africa, a place they have demonized for as long as they can remember, you know. And they are actually shocked to learn that Africans contributed massively to science, to philosophy, to engineering, to astronomy, spirituality, mathematics. They can understand that, you know, these are the people that were told they're primitive, they're backward, and that they're violent, they're aggressive. They still hold those stereotypes today towards black people of African descent and other different categories of indigenous people. And yes, some are shocked by genetic research showing that Europeans and Asians tend to carry more Neanderthal ancestry due to ancient migrations and interbreeding that happened outside of the modern African continent. But, you know, history is not supposed to comfort or to massage your ego. It is supposed to reveal the truth. And the truth does not belong to one race. Now, this doesn't really mean that white people should hate themselves or feel ashamed for existing or feel ashamed for this truth. That's not actually the point. But some are missing on this. The real issue is that the system of supremacy that taught generations of people distorted history in the first place needs to be challenged. I mean, that is the issue, because supremacy actually damages everyone. It damages black people by erasing their humanity and their achievements. And it also damages the very white people by disconnecting them from their real history, real ancestral identity, and replacing them with this artificial racial hierarchy that many of them now grow up to believe in. You know, in many ways, whiteness now became like a mask that hid the truth. And now that that mask is slipping away, is peeling back. That's why you're seeing many more young white people researching ancestry, questioning colonial narratives, and questioning the racial myth itself, and even feeling uncomfortable with what they discover. You can imagine, after all those years of of false history down the line, you're beginning to realize the truth, you know, it's uncomfortable, because once the mythology starts collapsing, people begin to ask, who were we even before this whiteness, before the race called white? And that question changes everything. At the end of the day, humanity did not begin as white, black, or racial categories. You know, those categories were built later through politics, through conquest, through, you know, economics and the power struggle. You know, the deeper people study history with honesty in them, the more they realize that human civilization is actually interconnected around the globe. And perhaps the greatest fear for systems that are built on supremacy is this: once people learn the truth, the illusion becomes almost impossible to fully restore. And that's actually what is happening. Yeah. So that's my take on it. I don't know what you think about it. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Leave me a comment of your thoughts. If you love the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if it is your first time. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.